Hawks don't have a timeout. Trey from midcourt to win it.
Swanson to first. Launching downfield, underthrown and intercepted. Keely Ringo has an escort down the sidelines, all the way to the end zone, and Georgia is going to conquer the Crimson Tide.
What's going on, guys? I'm Seth. I'm joined by Jarrett and Maddox today, and this is the Everything 404. We're going to be touching on some topics about the Atlanta Falcons, the Atlanta Braves, and the Atlanta Hawks. And let's get into it, guys. What do we want to start with?
I want to start with Falcons upcoming free agents. I think we have a couple of free agents that are key. I don't think, as you can see, Drew Dahlman. I think he's the main one we have to resign. I think the fluidity with the offensive line and the outside zone scheme, Drew Dahlman is vital to that. Yeah, Ryan Nuzil performed well in the role, but I mean, he's a restricted free agent this offseason too. Drew Dahlman is, I say you keep the O-line the same. Consistency with the O-line is going to make Penix better, and it's just going to make the offensive flow so much easier. Now, defensively, I'm not really key on any defensive free agent. I think you could resign a Contavious Street just for the depth. You can bring back Justin Simmons. I really wouldn't. I think DeMarco Hellams. I think the only reason why you brought Justin Simmons in the first place is because DeMarco Hellams got hurt preseason. I think the team really likes DeMarco Hellams. Yeah, he was a 7th-round pick, but I really like what we've seen preseason and what we saw late 2023 from him.
I agree with you on the offensive side for sure, but on the defensive side, I would say I would not mind at all bringing back Simmons. I think he added a lot to the team, and I think also you talked about injuries with Helms and whatnot. I think he adds that kind of you have that depth, you have that extra option. Obviously, Bates isn't going anywhere. So
Yeah.
I kind of like the duo and how they work together, but I do agree with you about the Contavious Street re-sign, and obviously the Dahlman re-sign is very vital.
Yeah, I mean, just going more like defensively, you have to let Judon go. I I have so much respect for Judon for not making us pay him a new contract when he first got traded here. When he first got traded here, he said that he had to prove it to us to get that new contract. I have so much respect for him for that. But like at the same time, he didn't perform to how we expected him to or how he should. So I mean, same with Lorenzo Carter. You have to let them both go. I think you have to sign. You have to address free agencies, not free agency, edge rusher this offseason.
Whether you get, Josh Sweat or you just draft someone like a James Pierce.
Or even like Aziz
Ojulari, yeah.
But you have to address edge rusher. I think Ebiketie, he kind of came on late last year.
He broke out the end of the year.
But like it's been the same thing with Ebiketie the last couple of years. He doesn't do anything for the first half of the year, and then he shows promise for
Well,
the
it doesn't
last
help
half.
that he has no help on the other side.
I mean, yeah.
whatsoever.
I feel like if you go out and get like a Mike Green, that's the 14, 15 sack guy in the NFL. You could go out and get like a Michael Williams too. It just you have to go out and get someone that can rush the passer. And right now, Judon and Carter will not. They don't do the job.
Personally, as a diehard Dogs fan, I would like to see the Falcons pick up either Jalen Walker or Michael Williams. I just think how dynamic they were on that Georgia defensive line, and we saw it in the biggest stages. I mean, that game against Texas was something incredible. The first game in the regular season, you saw Walker come up with 3 sacks. You saw, I believe Michael had 2.5. He had some tackles for loss as well against one of the best O lines in the country. I personally think they are two very dynamic pieces that could help us in many ways. But like Jared said, I agree with Green. I like a lot of guys that we could pick up. I think we should stay away from Shamar Stewart. I'm not a huge fan of him, but any of those three guys I'd be very happy with in the draft.
I also wanted to talk. He's not. He's a restricted free agent, but Nate Landman. I mean, I think he's a good bench piece. He's not what we saw from him in 2023. I think. I think if you bring in Sherwood from the Jets, combine him with Ulbrich, I mean, I
Sherwood's a
see.
dog. It is a dog.
Yeah, exactly. I see better potential with that than have Landman. So I wouldn't be mad if Landman was not brought back.
Troy Anderson also could be a solid depth piece as well. I mean, you really don't need Nate Landman if you go get Sherwood or
Exactly.
something.
But I think Sherwood, maybe an edge rusher, could be your key free agents this offseason.
Would like to say, huge fan of Caden Ellis. I know all three of us had the pleasure of actually meeting him and talking to him at training camp. Is that 2 years back now?
Yeah.
So I really like him. He's a great player. He's done a lot of great things this season. I feel like he improved a lot from last year. And I think bringing him back as a depth piece, and he's still a big play guy. I think he had some really big sacks. I'm pretty sure he had what, a 4 game streak with a sack in every game. Could be wrong. It was something along those lines, and he made some huge plays. I like him as a person and a player, so I'd
We
be happy to
also
see him stick
we've
around.
seen what he's done before in New Orleans. We had like an 8 or 9 sack season or something like that. Off
I
just
think it
a
was 7.
7, something like that. He like just off a blitz scheme. You bring in a heavy blitz scheme, it'll be fine.
Yeah. All right. I think now we should get into what the Braves are going to do or provide this spring training and how we expect them or how. Dang it. Just cut
This
that
dude,
out.
bro. This dude,
All
bro.
right. Someone do the Braves part.
So now let's just get into the Atlanta Braves. Coming off a mediocre year, as you know, they were a walking IL last year. So a lot of injuries held them back from having success in the postseason. They bring in outfielders and like Profar. They still maybe need a fifth guy. It's kind of a question mark right there. But Jerks and Profar, great addition. 3 years deal. Salt had a really good year last year for San Diego. So only up, I guess.
I think people truly have forgotten how good the Atlanta Braves were before all the injuries. I mean, you had one of the greatest offensive teams in Major League Baseball history, starting with the 40-70 MVP Ron Acuna Jr. First thing you see him go down against Pirates, he had the bad ACL injury once again. And you also saw us lose arguably a Cy Young pitcher in Strider. I think if he stays healthy, he would have been up there with Wheeler and Sale for the Cy Young contention. And I also think it plays a big role when you lose somebody the stature of Ronald Acuna Jr., it affects the entire lineup. Having a guy like him hitting leadoff, pitchers don't want to pitch to him, they want to pitch around him. And that was the thing in 2023 that kind of changed the game for the Braves because you saw these guys like Olson and Riley and Albies, they were getting better pitches, they were getting better opportunities. Having Acuna at the top of that lineup, who was a guy hitting 330, he was on base all the time. And honestly, if he got on base, he was a shoe-in to be at second base
Sometimes
by the time
third.
there's 2, 3 pitches, sometimes third as well. So Acuna changes the game. I've seen multiple videos of him ramping up activity. He's looked great swinging the bat, hitting the ball.
4 straight
So
homers in BP the other day.
yeah, and honestly, if you watch those videos, those balls were not rim gray, they were not fence grazers barely getting over the fence. They were, I mean, nukes, Ronald Acuna Jr. style. So it's great to see him ramping up activity. Strider, he's a little more harder to tell with. Acuna came out and said he was 95%, felt ready to go. Strider said he doesn't know how to weigh it. He's always been kind of a more kept to himself guy, but
They said this has been bothering him for like a while now. Actually, they just now discovered this. He's had this his whole career since the minors that he's had this issue, and they just found out about it recently in last season.
Yeah, and a lot of pointers were pointing towards the fact that it could have been something to do with the curveball. Most people know he added a new curveball to his arsenal during the offseason. And I think bringing in the new pitch, the arm movements, and kind of the wear and tear that it can cause on your arm when he does throw as hard as he does. And that's a thing
And
that a
pitch
lot of
clock.
people are exactly. And that's a lot of thing that people are worrying about too. People are worried about the fact that he is known for his velo mostly, being able to, throw you an 80-mile-an-hour changeup and then blow 100 right by you. So hopefully he's able to keep that velocity up. Hopefully he feels 100% and he's ready to go. But I think the Braves did the right thing in not going on a spending spree and trying to disband a team that 2 years ago was the best hitting team, arguably all time.
And
And
not to mention, you have like this is one of our years we've had a better farm system. I mean, it's not the best, but it's like you have better guys like Drake Baldwin or Nacho Alvarez, where you really don't. You could see one of them break out. I'd say Nacho more probably breaks out. Baldwin
yeah,
maybe.
I like Nacho a lot. He has a great glove at shortstop. We saw him make a couple of great plays up in the majors, which he wasn't really 100% known for. I still would have liked to see us maybe make a move to go after a shortstop. I'm a fan of Arcia. I think he brings a lot to the team. I think he still does. He's a very streaky hitter at times. But I feel like it is time to start turning towards the youth a little more, giving them a chance. If you weren't going to go after a guy like an Adames, or honestly, there wasn't really much out there to look at or go after. So I like what we did this offseason. I think we're going to be looking towards a really big season from Spencer Schwellenbach. I'm really excited to see him pitch and see how he improves on from last year. And I mean, there's people,
You probably see like
around
Schauber
Atlanta.
break on
eh,
too.
Shaver's another huge one. I'd also, because we are very deep at starting pitcher. Right now, I'd say, especially with Strider making a return soon,
It's just
having
the fifth.
him, yeah. And, you're looking at a possible rotation, say mid-season, everybody's, hopefully healthy and staying, in shape. And I mean, you could be looking at a rotation of Strider, Chris Sale coming off a Cy Young year. You could have Schwellenbach. You'd still have,
Ronaldo.
you have Ronaldo, who I think you could also possibly, if you see some guys like Xavi, you could see Ronaldo possibly come out of the pen a little bit this year. He was a relief pitcher, and I think a lot of that plays on kind of wear and tear on the arm. When you only come in as a reliever the entire season, and you're not pitching that starting inning amount, it can kind of affect you in a tough way. But once again, I like what the Braves did. I think they're going to have a very great year. I think we win the division personally. I think the team to beat in the National League is the Dodgers, but I think the Braves are going to get left out a little bit more than they should, and people will see how good this team really can be fully healthy.
I feel like the Braves are getting left out of like the NL East talks right now, or like to win the NL East. The Mets picked up Soto this offseason. The Phillies won the division last year, and they beat us in the playoffs two back-to-back years. The Braves, if they stay healthy, Matt Olson's going to rake. Ronald's going to rake. We have a better lineup than the Mets and Phillies if we can stay healthy. I'm so confident in that.
I
But
absolutely agree. Yeah.
it's just, can we stay healthy? I'm also worried. The last time Acuna got hurt, he came back a little. Like, I mean, he wasn't himself.
We're not gonna say.
After,
I mean, he wasn't really doing too much last year for his injury either. I mean,
I
he
mean,
was
yeah,
all
that's
right.
fair. But
I think I do want to add on to the Acuna injury, though. I think it also plays a role. He got hurt really, really early in the season this year. I want to say closer to maybe not even May, more
no, it was.
April-ish.
I think it was like mid-May.
I last time it was right at the All-Star
He
break when
is
he had that
June,
injury.
like July.
Yeah. 2, 3 games for the All-Star break, because I mean he was literally keeping this team afloat that year. We were having a ton of issues. I believe he had 24 home runs
Would have won
already.
the MVP. Would have won
He
the
yeah,
MVP.
he definitely could have been almost a shoe-in for MVP that year. So he did come back a little shaky. after that year, but I feel like with this injury being a lot earlier in the year and him having a lot more time to recover and seeing him swing the bat and run around, I follow him on Instagram and I see the clips on Twitter all the time. He looks great. He looks ready to go, and hopefully it translates over to the season because if he's fully back and healthy by the start of the year, and you can keep these guys like Ozzy and Austin and Matt healthy and good to go, and especially Sean Murphy, it's going to be a lot different year for the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, Sean Murphy's going to have to get it going with the bat because he's going to have to take on the workload, especially with Darnell going to the Angels.
Or you just call up Drake Baldwin, who can
I
be
mean,
great.
yeah, but you don't trade for Sean Murphy a couple years ago to him not be able to take the workload once Darnell got
Yeah.
left.
I feel like that was the point of moving Darno, though. I feel like they've seen enough in Baldwin. I think they trust in him to come up and kind of be that guy because Murphy can't catch every night. No matter who
I
it
mean,
is,
not
you're not
every
going to
night,
see a
but
catcher catch every night. And I think Murphy has had his injuries and things that have kept him out of games and kept him, you know, not playing as much. So I'd like to think we'd see a bunch of Baldwin this year, and I truly think he could be that guy. But I need to see him really in the major leagues, and I think that's one person to really, really look out for in spring training this year is Drake Baldwin. But
all
also
right.
one more point, Jared Kelenic, I feel like he's been kind of just left in the dust.
Yeah,
He
I mean,
was
it's hard with the Profar signing. I mean,
I, I understand that part, but you really look at a guy who for most of the year was probably your second best hitter behind Marcelo Zuna. I mean,
yeah,
he really brought it. When he was in the leadoff spot, I believe he was hitting around 340. He was hitting leadoff home runs. I mean, he was single-handedly with Ozuna and our pitching keeping us afloat. So I'd like to see him put in conversations more. He's got a great glove in the outfield. He makes a lot of great plays. I'd like to see a lot more of him this year. Obviously, with the Profar signing, you're not going to see as much of him this year, but I'd still like to see his name put in conversations and see him get some good at bats this year.
well, I mean, he'll be on the opening. He should be on the opening day lineup. So, like for like the first month, you'll hear a lot of killing it.
Oh yeah, no, and our outfield's going to be just fine. I think you bring
Best outfield in
Profar in,
baseball.
Michael
I'm saying,
Harris.
I'm saying now best outfield in baseball.
Oh, dude, when we get Acuna back and you have I mean, 2 years ago, the MVP, Ronald Acuna Jr., and then
Yeah,
you're looking at Michael Harris, who I think I've seen a lot of people talking about it. I think he is going to be a
That
30
was
30
that
guy
was our
this
best
year.
player last year. That was our best player last year
I
on the
Oh,
think this
offense
is
side.
Michael Harris breakout. Like I think he'll play at MVP level
What
this
he
year.
did it, he single handedly kept us somewhat alive in San Diego.
Ozuna. Oh well, yeah.
In San Diego, no one Ozuna was
yeah.
asleep. Everyone else was asleep. He was the only guy hitting.
I feel like that. I mean, but that's like majority of the Braves playoff teams the past couple of years. Like the bats just go to sleep as soon as we hit postseason.
I feel like last year it was mostly injuries, though. You look at one thing you got to look at, especially the year we won the World Series and the year that we ultimately had the insane hitting year 23 the year before. We had the best 7-8-9 in baseball. Our 7-8-9 was incredible.
Yeah.
You'd have those guys, and then you'd have them in 2023 loaded up for Acuna. He always had people on base. He was the one himself getting on base. In 2021, you didn't have Acuna. You had Soler hitting leadoff a lot that year. You saw Ozzy slide into the leadoff spot a lot. So I'm excited to see what this year brings for the Braves. I think Michael Harris. He kind of reminds me, and I'm not saying he is him or as good as him yet, but the way he plays in the outfield and his hitting abilities, he gives me kind of that, memory of Andrew Jones. I mean, Andrew Jones, arguably, I grew up hearing my dad talking about him and watching highlights on YouTube and whatnot. I mean, he's one of the best fielders ever. So Mike made some amazing plays. I'm excited to see how he continues that. I think he's a very good candidate for another Gold Glove. So the Braves are going to be fine this year. I
We're on a
think we
90
win the
win team.
division.
We're on
I
90.
think
Yeah,
we
we're
are.
on a 90 win
Yeah.
team.
I think the team to beat is going to be the Dodgers. I think that's a very possible NLCS matchup, Braves Dodgers. So I'm excited to see what this year brings.
All right, I think this is a good point to start talking about the Hawks and the DeAndre Hunter trade that happened pre All Star break.
Man, I'll be the first one to say at first I was not a fan at all. I was actually in P or no, I was in lunch at school and I had heard the talks about the trade. And going into the trade deadline, there was two people I expected to be moved. I expected Bogdan Bogdanovic to be moved, which he ultimately was towards right at the end of the deadline almost. And I expected Clint Capella to be moved, which honestly, you know, it's surprising that we moved DeAndre Hunter and it hurt me as a fan, but I understand where we're coming from with it. Our biggest issue this year has been injuries and depth. Number one, injuries. After the second game of the season, you come out 2-0. You lose DeAndre Hunter for I think it was 14 games or so with a knee contusion, and you didn't have Onyeka at the start of the year. He was still recovering from the toe surgery. He wasn't playing in back-to-back, sometimes missing 2, 3 games in a row. Kobe Buffkin had the shoulder injury, then he re-injured his shoulder and then went out for the year. And then Jalen Johnson had some shoulder issues, and even Trey missed a few games. It's just been an injury-ridden year for this Hawks team. And sadly, one of those people who seems to always be injured or having inconsistencies is DeAndre Hunter. Now, I think DeAndre is a very vital piece to a winning team. And I think that's what Cleveland saw in him, and that's why they went after him. But I also think the people we got in return were perfect for this team. You bring in a guy like Niang, who the Hawks need a lot more spot up shooters to go around Trae Young. Now, personally, I thought we'd go after more of a backup point guard, somebody to kind of fill the shoes of like a Lou Williams. We had him in 2021 in the ECF run. It kind of just felt right having a guy like him come off the bench, not only to, be that guy for Trey, who was only in his fourth year, or excuse me, third year. So I'm surprised we didn't go for that position, but I do like what we've seen out of Vit Krejci, who, he is going to miss the next probably 4 to 5 weeks, which is terrible once again. But I like what we did. Karis LeVert, I think, is a great fit for this team. He's an actually pretty underrated defender. He's very versatile on both ends. He shoots the three ball well. He finishes well down low, and he's very efficient in his shooting. And that's something George Niang also brings. And they always talk about how the best ability is availability, and that is what George Niang brings to your team. He is always playing. He's making efforts to be on the court. He stays healthy, and he is also a person who has worked with Quinn Snyder before. He's worked with most of the staff, and he's been a huge part of this team these past 4 games since he got here. And you saw us go 3-1. And I think the next game, we did lose in overtime, but it was still a very impressive game to me. Being able to keep up with the number 3 team in the East while missing a guy like Jalen Johnson, you just traded away DeAndre Hunter. You're still trying to work up that chemistry and everything else between each other with the new people coming in, as well as long as Terrence Mann, who has also been incredible. Him and Dyson playing defense together
Hey,
is,
former untouchable, man. Former untouchable.
yeah, he was a former untouchable, and
Untouchable.
I was watching the press conference there when they first got to the team, and one of the reporters asked him a question about playing against Quinn Snyder in the conference finals, or I believe the semifinals, when they played against each other. And George Niang, who was also on the team, they all had a good laugh about it. But Man is also a very good rebounder. He actually played some big man in some lineups, which is something we have been seriously missing, especially with the absence of Clint Capella now, who I'm not the biggest fan of Clint Capella. Those first years when he came in, he was great, but his offensive game just has not gotten any better. If anything, it's gotten a little worse, and he's just not the same
He's
player
an
he used to
idiot.
be.
He's no IQ. Idiot.
He's definitely made some tough plays, and he makes it tough to kind of keep him in the game because he can't shoot the free throws. He doesn't space the floor. And once again, wishing a speedy recovery to both Larry Nance Jr. and Vit Krejci, but losing Larry Nance is going to be huge for this team too, because it always seems to be those guys that kind of change your team. With the Hawks team in 2021, obviously you had Trey Young on that unbelievable run. He was, on his villain run. He was taking teams, you know, left and right, just knocking him out of games almost by himself. But you had the guys like Kevin Herter, Danilo Gallinari, Lou Williams, and and even the vet guys on the bench like Solomon Hill standing up for players and making, even some plays in the game himself. So I think this year isn't a wash just yet. I think this team matches up really well against some top teams in the East. Losing Jalen Johnson is obviously a blow that's kind of hard to make up for. You really can't make up for it. But I would like us to not wave the flag. I want to see us kind of come out. These next 10 stretch of games are all, I'm pretty sure every game over our next 10 games are teams that are either one spot behind us or ahead of us in the Eastern Conference. So this could be a really big chance for us to make up some ground and possibly make a run for a 5 or 6 seed and, hopefully match up against a team like the Knicks or Bucks, which I'd love to see that matchup in the playoffs. I think obviously you've got a lot better shot against them than you do against a Boston Celtics or a Cleveland Cavaliers because their depth is just kind of hard to get past. But I'm excited to see what this year brings,
Well,
and I'm
there's no point of waving the flag. Y'all, there's no
yeah,
point.
you don't have your pick.
There's no
And
point.
I think a lot of people took it as that was kind of the movement or the moment
I don't know why I didn't
was
get Vucevic. It still blows me, but
I don't know either. And there's a lot of people at the deadline I would have liked us to at least gone after. And we aren't behind the scenes. They could have been making calls, been making some moves. But it seems like over the years there's been a lot of players that we've just kind of slip through our fingers. And I know the guy he's always seems to be injured, not playing, but there was talks that we could have gotten Porzingis a few years back for a package like a John Collins and 2 second-round picks, which it seems crazy to me, but our front office, as much as I want to talk as a fan, they know more than I do. And I think we're also building things at our college park. A lot of people don't look at the G League teams and whatnot, but we really have some great guys down there. One of them being Keaton Wallace, who we've seen him come up at the NBA level and be a really, really incredible player for us and give some great minutes as a backup point guard. Another guy I'd like to touch on, Daquan Plowden. He's a bit older, he's 26, but he was just playing in the G League Next Up game not too long ago and actually showed out, had some really good plays. And he he was a guy, he came in, a very injury-ridden team for a couple weeks there. Right after Jalen went down, we were missing Trey, we were missing Bogey still. Hunter was out, I believe, and came in a game against the Bulls and shot almost 100% from both the field and three. He's a good rebounder. He plays great defense. So I'd like to personally see a lot more of Daquan Plowden and Keaton Wallace, but with Veet Krejci being out, I think that opportunity provides itself. So I'm excited to see what this second half brings for us. But I think you're looking at possibly at the best a 5 seed and at the worst maybe a low play-in team, 8 or 9. But I don't think we drop to 10, and I don't think we give up anytime soon.
I think these next 4 games are going to be vital in how the seeding for the Hawks will be if we even make the play in. You got Orlando tomorrow, which they're half a game ahead of us. You got Detroit, Miami at home, and then you have to go to Miami. If you can win all 4 of those games, that's going to be a huge turning point in the Hawks season.
Absolutely. I think it will be a game changer, especially because not only can you read off those last 3 teams again? I heard Orlando
You got
and then
Orlando, and then you got Detroit, and then back to back with Miami.
okay. So Orlando, we beat them just recently. Played a really good game against them. That was right before the Knicks game.
Yeah,
And for some reason, it seems this year the Pistons have had our number. They beat us early, really early on in the season in a heartbreaking 1 point loss. Excuse me. And we've also seen, I want to
we
say
actually
we
beat
played
Detroit last
them.
time we played them.
We did. It was a very close game. That was when Trey hit the incredible game winner, the step back
Yeah,
mid-range shot, which, you know, Trey Young I'll get to in a second, with the All-Star snub and whatnot. But for some reason, this Pistons team is just really sneaky. And I don't think they're talked about as much as they honestly should be because you have a guy leading the charge like Cade Cunningham. You have the other pieces like Malik Beasley, who, with DeAndre Hunter going to Cleveland now and being a starter, I think it's between Malik Beasley and Peyton Pritchard for Sixth Man of the Year. I think those are your 2 options. I think this may even be a spot where you see Malik Beasley win the award. And I think Detroit could definitely be a top 7 or 8 seed, but I don't see them holding up at the 5 spot. And I think that game against them will tell a lot for us. But oh man, Trey. Speaking of Trey Young, um, as a Hawks fan, watching him get snubbed from the All-Star game, and then he got in as an injury reserve, which is great to see. And in all honesty, he did his thing in the game. He played, in my opinion, a great game. He was actually one of the better players in the All-Star game. I'd say he had 15 of the team's
Second
41
best player in
points.
the first game.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
Thunder fan over
we've all
here.
seen that clip of him bouncing it off Curry and then dribbling it down and then
Yeah, that he
like
he it amazes me year after year how they continue to snub him and just you have a guy who is so dynamic at what he does. And I think it was a top 10 stat of people who generate the most points offensively. And by saying that, I mean generating points is, your assist, your points and assist combined together. So on average, you have a guy like Trey, rounding up numbers. I believe he's averaging 23 and 11 and a half. So we'll say 23 and 12. You have just right there, you do 2 times 12, you got 24. He's automatically 47 of your points if he gets his average. A lot of those plays that he makes, he's going to pass him out for some 3-pointers. So on average, Trey is 50 of your points. The fact
Now,
that was
what
it?
what does it take for Trae Young to leave?
No, that's a tough question to touch
Because
on.
when is enough for him?
I I think I don't think he leaves this offseason. I think this year is kind of one of those years where you're like, all right, especially if we make a run for a top 6 seed, I think it's almost a shoe-in that he stays in Atlanta. Obviously, as a fan, a diehard Hawks fan, and a huge Trae Young fan, he's my favorite player. Um, I think this offseason, he kind of maybe makes that tell where it's like, if we don't make the moves to win and we don't win this year, I think that's when he leaves because this is a contract extension year. This is an offseason where he is eligible for a contract extension, which, assuming a player like Trey Young, you probably want to give him the supermax. If I'm in the front office, that's the type of move I'd want to make. So unless you plan on letting him walk, which I don't
Well,
think
the
the
guard
Hawks do.
market's about to get raised a lot
It is. I don't
because
think you
of a
let the
certain
guy
guy,
walk.
about to get paid
You, you
$300 million.
yeah, you can't let the guy walk. If you're going to, for some reason, trade Trey Young, you have to make sure of the fact that you can move him and get something out of him. And I think a big issue has been, they talked about almost having deals done, almost having this done, but teams are not willing to give up what the Hawks want. An issue they made was trading away, or trading for DeJounte Murray and trading away 3 first-round picks. You traded away your future for something you thought was going to work out. Now, obviously, you made that move, and the first thing you thought was, all right, you had a team that went to the ECF 2 years ago. These guys are hungry, they want to win, and you're bringing in an all-star guard who specializes in defense. And he's a two-way player. It just seemed like the right move at the time. But now you're really looking at what you got back was great. You traded DeJounte and got back, in my opinion, the most skilled defensive player in the world right now. I think Wembanyama is a better defender, as in he does, he gets blocks, he does this, does that. But for Dyson to be his size and do what he does on the defensive end and harass other players and take other teams' star players out of the game, it's incredible. So getting him back was big. I like Larry Nance a lot. I hope we re-sign him, bring him back as a piece. And we got 2 first-round picks back. Now it does suck. It seems like the Lakers are not going to be as bad as we hoped. And it does seem that Bucks pick is not going to be good. So I would have liked to have tried to see us move one of those picks possibly, but we did ultimately hold on to them. So we'll see where those take us. But I'm really excited to see what we do this offseason in terms of I don't think we let Trey Young walk for many reasons, and I think we make a extra effort to go get a big man piece to pair alongside him so he doesn't leave because I think the front office knows, the fans know that Trey Young being in Atlanta just means more. him winning a championship here, winning in Atlanta, doing things, it means more overall. It'd mean a lot more to me, if we were to keep him and win a championship. I think it'd kind of just prove more to him as a player, or prove his point more as a player is why he is so great. Because I think he is arguably one of the most overhated superstars the league has ever seen. You know, 3 times now he's been snubbed from the All-Star game. Forget the injury reserve get-ins and whatnot. A guy that's averaging 20 and 10 should almost be a shoe-in. The fact that and you can't sit here and you can't discredit other players. I don't like to do that. The people that made it, they deserve to be all-stars too. Tyler Hero, he deserved to be there. Damian Lillard obviously deserved to be there. Do I think Trey Young deserved it more, or maybe was having better seasons and had a better argument? Yes, I do. So it's a tough situation to talk on. I don't think Trey Young leaves anytime soon. I think we make an effort to re-sign him in the offseason, and I think we make a big effort in free agency and the trade market to try and pair something alongside him to really make a effort to win. But health is going to be a huge part of it. If you keep Jalen Johnson healthy, him and Trey Young together, and it's like Trey said himself, it's smooth like peanut butter and jelly. I think they're one of the best duos in the NBA when healthy. And you have the pieces now alongside them, like Dyson Daniels. Onyeka Okongwu has been very impressive showing out. Like I said, you've got the guys down there in the G League, the young guys that have been showing out, Keaton and Daquan, Kavon Harris, who just won MVP of the G League Next Up game. So I'm excited to see where this offseason takes us, but I'm more excited to see kind of the efforts we make this year and where we end up in the second half. All right, guys, and that will do it for the Everything 404 podcast. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned for episode number 2, and we're excited to get back talking to you guys again soon. Have a good one.